A man stands on a hillside in Galilee. Dust on his feet, sun on his neck. 100 faces stare up at him. And he doesn't give them a sermon. He gives them a story about a farmer throwing seeds on bad dirt. That choice changed how the world learns. But to understand why, we need to go back to that hillside and see what most people miss. Because those simple stories were not simple at all. They were built to do something to the human brain that plain facts never could. And 2,000 years later, science is only now catching up to what that storyteller already knew. Picture a village in Lower Galilee. Mud brick homes, barley fields, sheep pens along a stone wall. Almost no one here can read. The best guess scholars have is that very few people could work through a written scroll. So when a teacher arrives, the crowd doesn't sit quietly and take notes. They lean in, they shout back, they repeat lines to each other. Learning here is a group sport. It's loud, it's physical, it's alive. Now drop a preacher into that world. He has a message about a coming kingdom, about mercy, about judgment. How does he get that message to stick in minds that have no pen, no paper, no way to look it up later? He can't hand out a pamphlet. He can't write a blog post. He has one shot, and it has to land in the ear, travel to the heart, and stay there for years. So he tells a story about a mustard seed. And that choice, story over statement, turns out to be one of the most effective teaching moves in human history. Here's what most people assume. They think Jesus told a handful of nice little tales, and each one has a neat moral at the end. Share with others. Be kind. Don't judge. Simple stuff. But that picture is wrong in almost every way. The real collection is closer to 40 pieces. Most are full-length stories with characters, conflict, and surprise. Some are shorter, punchy flashes of image that hit and move on. A few more are comparison lines, where one thing is held up next to another to make a point land. This isn't a teacher with a few good stories. This is a craftsman with a full toolkit, picking the right size blade for each cut. And the stories aren't random. They cluster. They overlap. They form patterns. Picture 3 circles on a table. One is green, the kingdom of God. One is red, judgment. One is blue, grace and mercy. Now scatter those 40 pieces across the circles. But here's what matters. More than a third sit in the overlap, right where 2 circles cross. A single story can be about the kingdom and grace at the same time, or about judgment and mercy in the same breath. These aren't single-point lessons. They're designed to carry more than one truth at once. Think about what that means for the listener. You hear a tale about wheat and weeds growing in the same field. On one level, it's about patience. Let both grow until harvest. On another, it's about a final reckoning. The weeds will burn. On a third, it's a warning. You can't always tell the difference between wheat and weed while they're still growing. One story, 3 hooks in the mind, and each listener grabs a different one first. But there's something stranger going on. Something most casual readers of these stories miss entirely. A handful of those stories come with a lock on them. Jesus tells the tale, and then he quotes an old prophet. A line from Isaiah, written centuries before. The line says, roughly, that people will hear but not understand, will look but not see. It's a statement about blindness, willing blindness, the kind where the truth is right in front of you, but you've already decided you don't want it. Now, why would a teacher quote a line about his audience failing to understand? That seems like a strange move. You're trying to teach people, and then you cite a verse that says they won't get it? Unless the goal isn't just to teach, unless the goal is also to sort. The parable works like a sealed letter. Everyone in the crowd hears the same words, but the meaning only opens for the person who's willing to wrestle with it. The farmer in the back row might hear the mustard seed story and think about his own garden. The Pharisee in the front row might hear it and feel attacked. The disciple sitting on a rock might ask a follow-up question later that night. Same words, 3 different doors, and the Isaiah quote is the frame around all of it. A warning that not every ear in the crowd is the same kind of soil. Many more stories use that same hide-and-reveal pattern without quoting Isaiah directly. They use images of lamps under baskets, treasure buried in fields, nets dragged through murky water. Something is hidden. Something is waiting to be found. But only if you dig. So now you have a teacher using dozens of tuned stories, layered with overlapping themes, framed by ancient prophecy, designed to open for some and close for others. That's already remarkable. But here's where it gets truly wild. Modern brain science has started to measure what happens when a person hears a metaphor versus a plain statement. And the gap is not small. When someone hears a straight fact, note God's kingdom grows slowly. One part of the brain lights up. The language center does its job, files the info, moves on. But when someone hears that the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, which grows into a tree where birds nest in its branches, something different happens. The language center fires, yes, but so does the visual center. You see the seed, you see the tree, you see the birds. Your brain is building a movie while it processes the words. That double firing, words and images together, creates a stronger memory trace. Studies show that people remember lessons wrapped in metaphor far better over time. That's the difference between a message that fades in a week and one that sticks for a season. And there's another layer. Many of these stories end with a twist. The good guy turns out to be the Samaritan, not the priest. The father runs to embrace the son who wasted everything. The workers who showed up last get paid the same as the ones who sweated all day. Those surprise endings trigger a jolt. And wait, that's not fair. Or, none, I didn't see that coming. That jolt acts like a bookmark in your memory. The brain flags the moment as important, worth keeping, worth replaying later. So these stories aren't just good teaching. They're built for the human brain. Metaphor for double encoding, surprise for emotional flagging, familiar images, seeds, sheep, bread, coins for easy entry, and open endings that invite the listener to keep thinking long after the story is done. But wait, there's a limit to this, and it matters. This whole system works because the audience is active. They're leaning in, arguing, repeating phrases to each other. In a culture of listeners, the parable thrives. But what about a culture of readers? What about a culture of scrollers? When you pull a parable out of that hillside and drop it onto a printed page, something changes. The call and response goes away. The group energy vanishes. The reader is alone, scanning quietly, moving fast. And the parable starts to flatten. It becomes a short story with a moral at the end. You read it, nod, and flip the page. The layered design, the overlapping themes, the hidden patterns, the Isaiah frame, goes invisible unless someone points it out. This is why so many people think parables are simple. They've only met them on paper. They've never heard them the way they were meant to be heard. In a crowd, in the open air, with dust in your throat, and a stranger elbowing you and saying, "Did you catch that part about the weeds?" And this raises a question that cuts right into today. If the most effective teaching tool in history was designed for ears, not eyes, for groups, not individuals, for taking part, not sitting back, then what does that say about how we try to share big ideas now? Think about it. You're watching this right now, probably alone, probably with a screen glowing in a dim room. The conditions are almost the opposite of that Galilee hillside. And yet something in these stories still reaches through. The mustard seed still grows in your mind. The prodigal son still tugs at your chest. The buried treasure still makes you wonder what you'd give up to own it. That's how well these stories were built. They survive translation. They survive being ripped from their original setting. They survive being read silently by a single person in a world the storyteller could never have pictured. But imagine what happens when you put them back into a group setting. When someone tells the story out loud, when people react in real time, when the surprise ending lands and you hear a gasp from the person next to you, the parable snaps back to full power. The layers reappear. The hide and reveal pattern starts working again. This is not just history. This is a blueprint. Every teacher, every creator, every person trying to move an idea from one mind to another faces the same problem that Dusty Hillside teacher faced. Your audience is pulled in every direction. Their memory is short. They've heard 1,000 messages today. How do you cut through? The answer has not changed in 2,000 years. You don't throw data at them. You don't lecture. You find a familiar image, something they already know, something they can see and touch in their daily life. You wrap your truth inside that image. You add a twist they don't expect. And you leave the ending open enough that they have to finish the story in their own mind. That's what makes it theirs. That's what makes it stick. The common pushback here is fair, though. These stories are rooted in a farming world. Seeds and soil and sheep. Most people today have never planted barley or searched for a lost lamb on a rocky hillside. Doesn't that make the images dead? Doesn't the cultural gap kill the effect? Here's the thing. The surface details are containers. The shapes inside them are universal. The seed is about small beginnings that lead to vast outcomes. The lost sheep is about the wild length someone will go to recover what they love. The buried treasure is about finding something so valuable you'd trade everything else without a second thought. Those shapes live in every culture, every century. You can swap the seed for a startup. You can swap the sheep for a missing child. You can swap the treasure for a moment of clarity that reshapes your whole life. The structure holds. The engine still runs. And that's the real lesson hiding inside the parables themselves. The medium is the message. The fact that Jesus chose stories over statements, metaphor over instruction, hiding over handing out answers, that tells you something about how truth works. It doesn't arrive clean and labeled. It arrives wrapped in something ordinary. You have to unwrap it yourself, and the unwrapping is what changes you. If this story planted something in you that's still growing, you'll want to hear what comes next. Subscribe, and the next tale will find you. A sealed scroll sits on a dusty road. A hand reaches down, and whether it opens depends entirely on who's reaching.